Welcome to The Happy Doc. My name is Taylor Brana. In this podcast and related website, thehappydoc.com, the goals are to inspire, develop knowledge, and provide tools to enhance your creativity, joy, and success as a health professional. Our guests provide their stories, tips, mindset, and much more, which have allowed them to succeed in such a demanding field. This episode will be sure to inspire your sense of creativity, joy, and motivation for change. Listen in to this amazing next guest. Waqas Khan, also known as Dr. I Am Sorry. Waqas is the writer, creator, and producer of the satirical, comical, and educational web series Healthcare Not Fair. He's been working as a hospitalist for the past 7 years, and his web series provides a deep insight into the main issues prevailing in American healthcare by reenacting them in a satirical and comical way. I've personally watched the episodes. They are hilarious. Please check them out. Enjoy the episode.
My name is Waqas Khan, and I'm a physician. Right now, I'm currently residing in Illinois. But before, I used to practice in California as well. I'm originally from Pakistan, and I went to medical school over there. King Arab Medical University is a very prestigious medical school in Pakistan, the second best, you can say. And then from there, I moved to United States in 2006 and did my residency at Harlem Hospital, New York. And finished that in 2009. And ever since then, I've been working as a hospitalist from 2009 up till now. So it's almost like 7.5 years, and believe me, the time flies.
Wow. So you've been practicing, you said 7.5 years?
Yeah, as a hospitalist.
Amazing. So, Waqas, thank you so much for joining on this show. Sincerely, it's great to have you. What got you excited about medicine in the first place?
So thank you very much for providing me with this opportunity. It's a little bit of a tragic story that when I was 14, my mom passed away because of breast cancer. And at that time, I was obviously a very young, immature, and I couldn't really find anything to channel my, frustration, anger, depression. I mean, I went through all those 5 stages of grief. And then eventually when I accepted the reality, I was like, why don't I just do something to contribute into the field that, if I had proper advancements in that, could have could have saved my mother's life. And in Pakistan, at that time, I'm talking about 1995, we didn't have that much advancement in the field of medicine, specifically in the field of oncology. So that kind of pushed me to get into medicine. And I also had some inspiration from my uncle, who was already a medical doctor at that time, and he's an endocrinologist and a diabetes specialist. So these were the main factors that pushed me into medicine, and I'm very glad that I chose that field.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Obviously, it hit home for you, so I can completely understand that. And so you went into hospitalist medicine. Why did you decide on hospitalist medicine?
So I think after doing the residency at Harlem Hospital, I realized that becoming a specialist, an oncologist, is definitely the great way to achieve my dreams, which I've always dreamt of. But then hospitalist was a new trend at that time. And when I looked into that further, I realized this is the person who is more connected with the patients, and this is the person who is like a bridge in between the patient and the rest of the specialties. When I realized that, I felt that maybe I do want to give it a try. And when I tried that, I was realizing that I was able to change more lives and touch more lives to being a hospitalist rather than just being a specialist who is most of the time just focused on one field and is not able to look at the overall picture. So hospitalist deals with not only with the patient's actual disease, but the social issues, the family issues, and that really gets you connected, and not only with the patient, but actually with the entire family.
Amazing. And that's a great point, and I think you really found passion in this kind of whole perspective of taking care of the the patient. Is that correct?
Yep.
Wow.
Because that was the whole point. Like, in the end, it's all about patient care and taking care of the patient, and also the family at the same time. Because if you trace back the few things that I told you about myself was that my mom passed away, but I was still suffering as the immediate family member. So it's not only the patient who suffers, it's also the family that suffers at the same time. So you need to find a connection that not only you reach out to the patient, but also reach out to the family. And I thought that a primary care physician or hospitalist, these are the two positions in the field of medicine then that are at the best position to help out the patient overall and the family at the same time.
Wow, and that's a great point you made of, it's not just the patient, it's the individuals connected to the patient that we need to think about.
Absolutely.
That's a really great point, and something to keep in mind, I think, in all fields of medicine, really. With that being said, what brings you joy in your daily practice as a physician?
So when my patient tells me, like, thank you, doc, and it's because of you that I'm feeling better, even sometimes it may not be permanent, because I know that this patient, because of the terminal diagnosis, may not continue to feel better. But if he, even for just few seconds or a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, he's going to feel better because of me, that's what really keeps me going.
Yeah, so it's even just, you kind of said it, it's like the small thank you, the appreciation for your work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's, if there's any individuals who are, maybe not doctors, but just patients and human beings in general, we seek out this appreciation, and it goes a long way for our doctors. So that's a really great point. So the thing I really wanted to talk and discuss with you is the creative aspects of medicine. So just to describe to the listeners, what are you creating? What have you done in terms of the creation aspect of medicine?
So are you referring to my web series or?
Yes, I'm referring to the web series.
Okay. So, yeah, I just wanted to be clear about it.
Unless there is more that you're doing, in which case I'd love to hear the other parts of it.
Yeah, we can go step by step, but
sure.
I think we can definitely go. We can definitely discuss the web series first. So my web series name is Healthcare Not Fair, and this is what I launched. So I'm the creator, the producer, and the director. I definitely got some help from some professionals to launch it. And it started as an experiment initially, and then later on I thought, like, okay, this is the way that I can communicate with more people and reach out to a much bigger audience rather than writing a book or writing articles. So I ended up developing this comical, satirical, and at the same time educational web series called Healthcare Not Fair. And I am myself playing the protagonist in the web series as Dr. I Am Sorry. So basically, the guy is a physician, and he is really apologetic to his patients for what the medicine has turned into. So it was supposed to be a profession, but now, unfortunately, it has turned into a business that is really affecting the patients and the physicians and the families. So I'm just trying to bring out both the positives and the negatives, so you can say the light side and also the dark side of the medicine at the same time through this web series.
That's amazing, and I love the fact you created this web series. It was just an idea, and then you brought together this team to work with you, and it's awesome to have that vocal discussion. Did you have any apprehensions, before starting this, maybe how it would affect what, your peers might think of you, what the medical community might think of you, all of those things?
So absolutely, just like anything new that you want to start with or you want to introduce, you are always apprehensive about it. because you may get a very good positive response, but at the same time, you can also face a lot of criticism, and which I also did. But I'm really glad that overall the response from my peers and from my family and from my friends, a lot of them who belong to the field of medicine, and then a lot of general public to whom I really want to reach out to, it was overwhelmingly positive.
Wow, that's great. So how did you go about, you had this idea, okay, I want to create this video series. How did you develop your tools? Who did you reach out to, and how did you kind of create this team? What was that process like?
So if you ask me, like, if I have a mentor in this field, so I basically do not, but I do have a person who inspired me to do that. And I would name him very clearly, and his name is Z-Dog MD, and I'm not sure if you're aware of him.
Yes, I'm very aware of him, yes.
Exactly. So he's you can say the medutrainment. This is the new terminology that is now out there and is trending. It's called the medutrainment, and he inspired me to do something like that. And I was not that good of a singer as him, but I thought, like, maybe I can use some of my acting skills to reenact what I face on an everyday basis. So I had so many stories that I learned through my residency and then my career as a hospitalist. And I've been working both as a day hospitalist and as a nocturnist. So basically working at night. And believe me, these are two different worlds. So the daytime is a totally different world, and the nighttime is a totally different world. And I gathered all these stories and tried to reenact them in this web series. So first of all, I came up with the script, and then my wife and some of my friends, and I really appreciate them for their help, that they have been helping me to polish it further. And also we came up with the protagonists, and then also different characters, which we are actually trying to portray as the main diseases sometimes, as smoking, obesity, and then cancer, and then sometimes as the physician suicide, which is a very big issue going on. So we've been trying to discuss all these different topics in all these different episodes. So after getting the script done, I had to assemble a team, a production team, who would help me out to really put this thing into reality. And luckily I had some friends who are in this field of movie production and on a professional basis. So there was a friend of mine. His name is Adnan, and he's a director, and he went to a proper film school in California. I got him involved, and then another friend of mine, his name is Roy. He's an independent movie maker in New York City. So I got him involved, and together we were able to bring some other crew on board and some professional, right now still not really that much recognized, but aspiring actors and actresses to be a part of this project. So there was a lot of hard work that went into creating this web series.
That's amazing, and what I love is you're able to combine your experience as a hospitalist and your creativity as an actor, and kind of being able to you literally just created from the ground up. You had these talents and skills, and you combined that with the information of medicine that and you were able to create this dialogue. That's really special. I think it's important for people to hear, someone doing something like this.
Yeah, and then it wasn't really done before, especially you can say a physician himself hasn't really done it that often. We see very few and rare examples. So I'm very proud to come up with something like that. And I have been watching these medical soap operas like Scrubs and
Sure.
Grey's Anatomy and House. So there was still something that was missing, and sometimes I would feel like it's like a hyperbole. Things are kind of exaggerated. but then why don't we just exaggerate them in a way that they are satirical and comical, but at the same time, they are closer to reality and closer to what we really face as physicians and as patients and as family members on an everyday basis.
Sure, exactly, and I think that's great that you're trying to create these true situations, and again you have this creative way of making it. That's amazing. And you had mentioned, so there's another step or there's another creative process you're currently working on?
So that basically involves fixing, the primary care and also addressing the end-of-life issues. And I'm a part of a group of physicians who are basically trying to promote the direct primary care model. And that's a whole different conversation. But this is something that we are doing it as a group. And actually, I'm just a very, very small part of that. And I really appreciate those physicians who are taking big steps to move forward. But this is something that we can discuss maybe on another conversation, or if you want,
sure.
We can definitely discuss at the end of it. But but this is like totally separate from the web series, and it's not really. But actually, my web series got me connected with them since they watched my episodes. but these are two totally different avenues.
Sure. So we can share this on another time. That's absolutely fine. To change gears here, how would you describe happiness? What is happiness to you?
So satisfaction and fulfillment from your job. It is absolutely not the financial gains. So a lot of people think that physicians, they just made it because they are now earning hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. Believe me, this is not what brings you happiness. Maybe initially, but then later on down the road, you realize like this is just a part of it, but absolutely not everything. And what really brings you fulfillment and happiness is to actually help out the patients and their family members and try to make a difference to somehow fix the broken healthcare system that we have, which is another discussion. And then I think I would like to actually discuss that gradually once we get deeper into the conversation. But
sure.
Happiness is directly linked to the satisfaction and fulfillment that is derived by helping out your patients and just seeing a smile on their face.
Absolutely. And one point that I had from a previous interview is the separation between the love and the art of medicine, such as the satisfaction and fulfillment, versus the work of medicine, which is, discussing with third-party issues and insurance companies and all the excessive notes. How do you balance that within your own work?
So this is a very good point, and I want to make a very clear distinction between these 2 points. So being a physician and helping out our patients is totally separate than struggling through the system and talking to the insurance companies, the hospital administration, and dealing with threats of the lawsuits. So this is totally separate. So what we, like as a hospitalist, what I've really gone through is that to be my patient's advocate. For example, if the patient needs to stay in the hospital for a longer period of time because he's not really at that point. But on the other hand, the insurance companies or sometimes like the hospital administration, they are trying to push you to discharge the patient. So you stand your ground at that time, and you say that the patient needs some more time. There are some issues that we need to address, and then you just do the best thing for the patient at that time. So, in that case scenario, which happens quite often, there's a very thin line between what is right and wrong, and you just have to you have to be your patient's advocate, and this is what you really need to keep in mind. And as long as that's going to be your main goal, then hopefully you should be able to do good.
That's a great point. I really appreciate that response. So to move forward towards what you alluded to, what are some of the important aspects of change that we need to focus on in the medical field, and things that you feel strongly that we as students, residents, physicians, maybe even the greater community at large, what can we advocate? How can we make change actively in our community?
So first of all, being a medical student, we need to make sure that we are in this field after giving an informed consent. So we should not be joining this field just because of peer pressure, just because of parents' pressure, because there's so many parents I've seen who are doctors, and they just want their kids to be doctors just to somehow carry on a family tradition. So for my advice for those parents and for those kids is that if they're not having their calling and they don't feel that they are not passionate about this field, then they definitely should not be in this field. They can perform much better in other fields because sooner or later they're going to realize that they've made the wrong decision, and they will end up burning out, and they will end up feeling that they made the wrong decision just because someone else forced them to do that. So it should be a very well-informed consent and decision, and for that they need to go on different observational rotations, externships, and see what a doctor goes through, and especially at the primary care level, and then at the inpatient setup. So they need to explore all these different avenues in the field of medicine and then make the decision. And another thing I would really like to mention here is that the financial gains and the financial goals should not be the part of the decision making. I mean, should be maybe a small fraction of the decision making, but it should not be one of the main factors. So the main goal and factor should be if they can see themselves in the long term taking care of some very sick people and people who need their help, not only just on the medical level, but also on the social level at the same time.
Sure, absolutely. You say, what is the conversation we need to have on the resident or the physician level in terms of making active change and improving medical culture?
So now there are two things. One is the medical training, and that's a separate issue. And then the other thing is the healthcare overall. How can we improve that? So first of all, I would like to address the medical training part. So I was an intern in a community hospital in New York, and my days as an intern were, I would be very frank, were quite brutal and gruesome. We would be doing 36 hours calls and multiple admissions, and we had to do a lot of scut work at that time, which involved collecting blood samples, doing EKGs, collecting urine samples, blood cultures. I mean, anything you can think of, we as interns had to do it all by ourselves. So that would take a lot of time and energy from an intern to basically learn the actual medicine. And by the time we are presenting the case, we were really exhausted. And I could remember that many times, and not only me, but multiple other interns, they would not be knowing the case that much, and they would be knowing more, and they would be focused more on collecting the blood samples and doing the scut work. So we need to develop a culture in the field of medicine in which the interns are supposed to be focused more on learning medicine, but rather than just doing the scut work. That's one important thing. And the other thing is the work hours. So that has been a continuous debate. Recently, the work hours were reduced to, I think, 18 hours at the max, and now they are talking about increasing it further. But I think there should be some sort of cutoff. There should be some sort of limitation on that, some sort of cap, that this is the number of admissions that the interns or the medical residents are supposed to admit, and these are the number of hours that they can work continuously in one shift. And we as the medical community should be on the forefront advocating for our interns and residents, because if we end up burning them out at such an early stage, how can we expect them to be a very accomplished and satisfied and happy doctors in the future? So I think these are a few. And then unfortunately, there's such a high rate in the medical community, including the medical students and interns, residents, and all the way to the physicians and attendings. High rate of physician suicide, depression, and unfortunately the drug use abuse. So we need to address these issues in a very you can say in a very efficient way, in a very proactive way, to prevent these things happening before they to prevent these things happening that often. So there was recently, and I actually made a video on that, and it's about physician suicide. Almost 400 physicians commit suicide annually, which is almost the size of an entire medical class, and it's an alarmingly high rate. And there are physicians like Dr. Weibel, Pamela Weibel. She's actively working on this issue, and I saw a couple of other physicians really coming out and speaking about this thing. So we, as medical community, need to collectively come out on the forefront and address this issue.
Absolutely. Wow. You made a lot of great points. And speaking, from my level, the medical training is definitely important. I can speak about even medical students, being very depressed, exhausted, tired, from the competition of the board's exams, from the competition in terms of application to residencies, and now there's almost like a funnel, so to speak, with there being a lot more students to residency spots, and so it makes this a very competitive culture and a culture that should be very collaborative in nature. So it is a tough situation, and that's why we bring up this discussion. So in terms of what can we, besides just provoking the conversation, what solutions are being offered, and what change are you seeing, or are you seeing change from your level as a physician?
So the change is there, but it's very slow, and it's because once physicians they go through that process and they become attendings and they feel comfortable, then they don't look back. And I think that's the main issue, because as an intern, as a medical student or a resident, you don't have enough power to change the system. Like you already explained the whole process, that you are living in a very competitive and to some extent a hostile environment towards you, which is not that much friendly, and you just cannot start another battle. So your battle should be fought by your seniors, by your attendings, who have already gone through that, and they are the ones who need to make sure that their coming generation doesn't have to go through the same process. But unfortunately, once they become very comfortable with their lifestyles, they don't look back and try to help out and change the system, which they had been complaining so much when they were going through their trainings.
That's a really, really great point, and maybe that's a point we should highlight from this conversation, as well as the people who can make change should make change and must be vocal and create things such as what you're doing with your creative work. So I think that's a really great point.
And by that, I do not mean like everybody needs to just come out and start making web series. What I'm trying to say, like folks, like the doctors, especially in the academic position. So I'm not in an academic position, and it's also because I live in a small town in central Illinois. So there's not too many actually hardly any academic position in the area where I live. But those doctors who are in academic positions, I think the the main onus and the responsibility is on their shoulders to help our next generation by changing the system and make the environment more friendly towards them rather than hostile.
Sure, and I'm even thinking like on a more local level, you know, changing the environment of the residency program that they're working in, or, you know, on my level in terms of, you know, being a medical student, making sure that we're creating a collaborative, you know, community within our medical school, or, you know, so the change is everywhere, but it requires some effort on our parts, you know. So there's a lot of change we can do at any level of medicine.
Absolutely, and we should definitely refrain ourselves from doing intern shaming, medical student shaming, and physician shaming, because I know we try to build this competitive culture, which is very good for to keep the standard of the medicine. But at the same time, we also need to make sure that are we pushing the limits or not? Can that other person handle all that pressure and competition? So for that reason, like I mentioned before, that anyone who wants to go into that field, make sure that they are giving an informed consent, and at the same time, those people who are at the attending position, they need to also adopt to a moderate approach towards the medical students and the residents, so the environment is more friendly towards them, and they would feel like home rather than feeling like being on a battlefield.
Absolutely, absolutely. To change gears here, what is a happy moment or happy story or achievement that you can think back on during your career where you really felt like you had great impact?
So there's one story that I remember very vividly and clearly, and that was in the very first year of my career as a hospitalist. And I was working as a day hospitalist at that time. And obviously, for patient confidentiality, I'm not going to tell you the name or the too much detail of that story, but I can tell you the case scenario and what I went through and what really gave me that much happiness out of that scenario. So it was a very young, hardly 42-year-old guy who was suffering from gastric cancer, and he was one of those patients who would never complain. I mean, I had pretty much never heard him complaining that he needs a pain medication, he needs some extra attention. He would just stay silent and just not talk much. And I was afraid that he could be undergoing through some sort of a depression because of his fatal diagnosis. And what I did at that time, just to make sure that I'm connecting with him properly and I'm able to at least address all of his issues, I just finished rounding one day, and after rounding at him, I went back to him and sat down with him for maybe like good 15, 20 minutes or maybe half an hour, and just chatted with him as a friend, like how he feels about life and what is he feeling right now, and is there any way I can help him out? And he started talking to me about everything else but medicine. And actually, I really enjoyed that conversation with him. And when I was about to leave, that patient told me that what I would really want you to do for me is like if you can just come and attend my funeral if possible. And I was like literally just broke into tears, that
wow.
This is what he really wants me to do, just like to attend his funeral and to be there at that time when this inevitable thing is going to happen. So I mean, I wasn't really sure about my schedule, and I wasn't really sure when is it really going to happen. But I told him that I'm going to try my best. Unfortunately, I was not able to make it, but even up till now, I remember him. I remember his name. I remember all the stories that he told me, and I still feel happy that I was able to make some difference in his life, even if it was for hardly a few minutes.
Wow.
So, but I'm not saying that everybody has to do that, like sit down with their patient and talk to. It's just a very personal story that I still remember up till now. But this is the connection that I'm talking about. This is the moment of happiness and joy I'm talking about. And this is the moment which future you're going to be able to help somebody out else like that too. So these are this is like the story which I still remember and I wanted to share.
Wow, that's a great story, and a point of learning that I got from that I think is really applicable to anyone in any field, but specifically in medicine. And something I've noticed is, so you could have gone home, or maybe you had some other work to do, but you took that 20 minutes to spend time with this patient. And that's something I've learned in my rotations, even the idea of staying late or just putting your attention, not necessarily in a professional manner, but just staying some extra time beyond what is needed just to listen or to be there, so to speak, has a huge impact. And I think all the best stories I've had or connections I've made have been from staying late or giving that time.
Yep, absolutely, because like I mentioned before, it's not the financial gains that are going to bring you that happiness and joy. And it is not that achieving a target of seeing 20, 25, or 30 patients a day that is going to bring you the happiness. It's like, what actual difference have you made in all of these patients' lives? And you may not be able to make a difference in everybody's life, and sometimes people are also just expecting you to just do your job and get out of there. But it's up to you that where you feel like you can find that actual real happiness that you're looking for.
Absolutely. And that was a great story. Thank you for sharing. Waqas, is there any inspirers, motivational speakers, books, or blogs that you like to look up and read that you've found impactful that other people could look up?
There are some serious medical blogs out there, and then there are some satirical. Since our field is already so serious, so I don't want to make anyone too much further tragic or depressed. So, but like one of the very serious blogs who's, I think, definitely making some impact and difference in the field of medicine is CAMN-MD. But most of the time it's a serious blog, and it shares very serious articles about in which direction our healthcare is heading towards. But it still shares a good variety of topics and articles. And CAMN-MD has absolutely helped me with sharing my videos as well. And then this is the one blog that I would highly recommend. And then ZDogMD. So that's another one. And then Gomer blog. So Gomer blog is actually is a medical satirical blog, and these are physicians which are actually want to they want to stay in the background. They don't want to come up and come on the surface like me or ZDogMD. But still, I think they're doing a very great job by publishing these satirical articles, and I've published some of them myself. And they not only poke fun out of and humor out of the field of medicine, but at the same time they also start a conversation, and they also start to make us think, how can we possibly make a difference? So this is something. These are some recommendations that I have, but otherwise, I see there are a lot of other medical professionals who are trying to write articles, blogs, and are coming on the surface.
Wow! Thank you for offering that.
And one more thing I would like to mention: so Jamie Katuna, she's one of the. I think she's yet to go into the medical school, but I've been hearing her poetry and her videos, and they are also very inspiring. And this is something that gives you hope that, and then like even you yourself, that the medical students or the people who are not in the field of medicine, but they're actually trying to learn the field of medicine before learning medicine. That gives you hope that these people can really make some difference when they're going to be actually a part of this great profession.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. And I actually interviewed Jamie not too long ago, so she's a great voice for the students. And yeah, I want people to promote themselves in this work and to learn within medicine and the creative outlets and the ability to learn in different ways. I think it's very important. Waqas, what would you tell, if you could look back, 10 years, maybe when you were a medical student or you were deciding on your work, what mentorship or tips would you have changed? What type of information would you have told yourself?
So, coming into so I would like to mention that American healthcare system is very unique. So I came from Pakistan, and the Pakistani healthcare system is very different. I came over here obviously looking for the American dream, which I'm very glad and proud that I have kind of achieved, and I am really very grateful and thankful to this great country to giving me with this, providing me with this opportunity. But there are still some major flaws in the healthcare system, and I'm going to talk about some flaws, not because that I'm complaining, but I actually want this healthcare system, which has all the potential to be the best healthcare system in the globe, to be one. And those people who are either thinking of becoming a part of the system or are already part of the system, we need to work together on that and make sure that we can possibly make some difference. So the most important thing in the American healthcare system is to fix the primary care. And I would try to tell my future colleagues and current colleagues that if we can somehow do some effort to fix the primary care, and then the other part is the end-of-life issues. So these are the two extremes of our healthcare system, that if we can fix them and we can have more and more discussions about these two topics, then the rest of it will fall in place all by itself. We basically try to, we need to make sure that we are having more interest in primary care, and we encourage our young generation to go into primary care to make the real difference, because that's from where everything starts. Once the primary care fails, then the patient ends up landing into the hospital. And then once he's in the hospital, and if the diagnosis is terminal, then we need to make sure that his journey towards the inevitable is comfortable and supportive as much as possible. And that brings me to the end-of-life issue. And we need to educate, again, the patient and the family and address their concerns at that time, because those last few months can be extremely crucial for not only the patients and the families, but also for the entire healthcare system, because that's where most of our resources, they get diverted, and they, a lot of time, all the efforts that we put into just keeping someone alive, they turn out to be very futile. And on the other hand, all these resources could have been saved to take care of those patients who we could actually save in the real life.
Yeah, and that's a very important discussion. I'm sure it's very difficult, obviously, to draw the line of when do you stop support, and how the families deal with that situation.
And I have actually made a video on that topic. It's the end of life video, and this is the only video on my web series that is totally serious, and there's no satire, there's no comedy in that. So I would highly recommend everyone to watch that video.
Yeah, and I can definitely provide a link to that as well on my website.
That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Waqas, with that being said, I'm sort of out of questions for you today. Was there any information you wanted to conclude with to inspire the listeners today and to the medical culture at large?
So, in the end, I would just like to tell everyone that, wherever you are, regardless if you are a medical student, intern, a resident, and attending in the academic setup or in a hospital setup, you can make a difference. And all you need to do is just to be a little more proactive and do some more networking and always be your patient's advocate. And as long as we just focus on what's best for our patients, then we will be able to find the full satisfaction and fulfillment that we are looking forward to from our profession. And it's not easy because, unfortunately, our profession has been, I would say, hijacked by the insurance companies and the administration, and there are so many other players that are running this profession for us, and that really makes us frustrated. But if we let it go, then nobody else is going to be able to take it back for us. So this is our fight, and we have to fight it wherever we are.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And Waqas, actually, one thing that came up in a question I have, what is one actionable step that any listener who is listening in today, what is one action step that they can take today that will help them towards their success in medicine or help make change in the community?
So it all depends on which position they are. Because if you are an intern, I don't think you can make as much of a difference as an attending, and vice versa. So you need to keep on bringing up the main issues that your community or that your specific group is facing, and letting it, and then always be there for each other. And if you are an intern and you see that that person is somehow not finding the fulfillment in and I'm basically trying to put the example of the physician suicide, because this is something that was like a hidden truth of our field and wasn't really being discussed that much. But then the physicians and all over the field of medicine, they started realizing this is something which we do not discuss, and this is something that we need to keep on bringing on the surface wherever we are. And eventually, now it is making some headlines over and over again. So we should always work in collaboration with each other and look for each other's back and always be there for each other. That's how I think we can make an impact. If we just keep on thinking about ourselves and just keep on thinking that if I just somehow get through this medical training, through this medical school, and then if I just somehow get through my rounding for today, then I'm fine and everything will be fine for me. No, eventually all these things are going to get to you. So you should always be there for those people within your own ranks who are suffering from anything and who have any concern, major concerns related to the field of medicine.
Sure. Wow. Well, that's a great point. With that being said, Waqas, I sincerely appreciate you for giving your time today. And this is a great conversation to be had and to be continued to have. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I would also like to tell the listeners that please spread and share the message, and I will definitely share this interview on my Healthcare Not Fair page, And then I also recommend all the listeners to listen not to only this interview, but even the ones in the past, because I think you're definitely doing a very great job, and we need more people like you to take the charge and lead in the field of medicine.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening into this episode. It was a blast to record. If you have any comments or feedback, send me a message to any of my channels. The Facebook page is www.facebook.com/thehappydoc. The Twitter account is thehappydoc1. The Instagram account is thehappydoc1. You can send me an email to thehappydoc1@gmail.com. And now I have something to ask of you. If you are with my mission of elevating the space of medical care and the medical community, if you are with my mission of elevating the positivity that is within the space, then please comment, like, and share this material. Have a great week, guys, and tune in to a new episode every Sunday.